The housing crisis is a disaster. In the US alone, 70% of people who want to own a home cannot afford it anymore. In the UK, owning a home is as hard as it was way back in the 1800s. Why is it happening? Well, in just 2 generations, house prices have skyrocketed, while your paychecks are stuck in the mud. Plus, the average 30-year mortgage rates are now 7.5%, making homeownership a distant dream. And to make matters worse, people who rent are feeling the pinch. Rent costs are also going up considerably, especially in big cities. In San Francisco, for example, you can now rent just a bed in a room for $1,200 a month. Yep, you heard that right. Just a bed, no fancy apartment or even a whole room. Meanwhile, in London, you can get a tiny space under the stairs for 500 quid a month. If you add up the other pressures related to the cost of living, it's a ticking time bomb of financial catastrophe. This disaster isn't solely the result of history or generational economic struggles. It's a crisis escalated by a handful of corporate giants. These names might be familiar to you: Vanguard, Blackstone, UBS Group, and BlackRock. They bought a staggering $60 billion slice of the housing market, pushing the entire system to the edge of collapse. And now you are gonna see how they pull it off. Buckle up, it's showtime. Welcome to Nitzero Club, the place where impactful people come to get inspired. You know Wall Street, right? Those big money folks who handle a ton of cash for their clients. Well, they've taken a sudden interest in regular people's homes. Companies like Vanguard and BlackRock, who handle trillions of dollars, are pouring loads of money into buying houses to make a fat profit. What's the result? Well, they're outbidding regular folks by a mile, sometimes paying 50% more than what houses are actually worth, just a few hours after a house hits the market. In 2022, nearly 25% of all the homes for sale didn't end up on the hands of families who needed them, but in the hands of giant corporate investors instead. That's almost double the amount from the year before. It's hard to believe, but just 50 years ago, Wall Street had nothing to do with homes. They were playing a different game, betting their billions on mortgage bonds instead. So what made them change their minds? Everything went haywire when mortgage bonds from banks suddenly became worthless after the big housing market crash in 2008. Banks were sure that house prices would keep going up, but surprise, they didn't. And that's when the whole mess began. Big banks like Lehman Brothers collapsed, needing government bailouts that drained billions from taxpayers like you. About 10 million families lost their homes during this crash to foreclosed sales, and the prices of houses fell about 30%. But guess what? Wall Street, the folks who caused a lot of this mess, saw a golden opportunity. That's where BlackRock comes into play. This company became famous after the chaos. How? The US government hired BlackRock for a massive job: handle all the money and assets left behind by the crisis. With all that cash and powerful connections, BlackRock turned into a multi-trillion-dollar powerhouse. Instead of just playing with mortgage bonds to make money from houses, BlackRock decided to be the boss of real estate by buying houses itself. Lots of houses were being sold super cheap because many people couldn't pay for them anymore, and there weren't enough people buying houses. So if more houses were bought, it could help the housing market to recover. Now here's where it gets wild. The government stepped in, handing these big shot investors the keys to hundreds of thousands of foreclosed houses. Some of them were sold for as low as 50 or 60 grand, but most of them were in the price range of $100,000 to $150,000. Years down the road, this would turn out to be a huge mistake. At first, they sold houses that were in really bad condition, and it cost a lot to fix them up so people could actually live in them. The plan was for big companies to buy these houses, fix them, and rent them out to families who need a place to live. They thought that eventually these families could save enough money to buy the houses back. But the problem was that they thought Wall Street investors wouldn't take advantage of the system. Such a naive mistake. Henry Ford wisely said, "The only real mistake is the one from which we learn nothing." That's why you are part of the Nitzero Wealth Club. You don't just want to make a living, you want to design your life. That's why many people subscribe to this channel, and you should too if you haven't already. So a boatload of Wall Street money started coming in, buying up homes that people couldn't keep. In just 6 years, $36 billion from Wall Street was used to buy over 200,000 of these homes. It was like a new money-making machine appeared out of nowhere, and lots of companies jumped on the bandwagon. The biggest one was Invitation Homes, which owned a whopping 80,000 single-family homes. Eventually, they joined forces with Blackstone, the largest private equity firm with nearly $1 trillion worth of assets under its wing. As the tenants paid off the mortgage, these companies made a ton of money because the house prices went way up. Fast forward a few years and a housing market rebound turned their bargain deals into huge cash cows. Then they used those houses as collateral to get really huge loans, which made them even richer. And guess what they did next? Yep, they kept on buying even more houses. Well, it turns out these companies were terrible landlords. When they bought these houses, they only spent the absolute minimum on repairs and upgrades, as long as the initial impression looked decent. They couldn't care less about the long-term issues. A few years later, the profits started drying up as the market stabilized. So these corporations, who were now homeowners, had to come up with sneaky ways to cut costs. That's when the rent starts to skyrocket and tenants got stuck with things that were the landlord's duty, like pest control and maintenance. If they refused to agree, they were kicked out. It was just the beginning, but the chaos never stopped. Wall Street investors found a way to use these houses to mess with local housing markets. Here's the plan. They buy up a bunch of houses all in one spot. This gives them the power to set the rent prices in that area. And later, they could sell those homes at crazy high prices, pocketing a huge profit. In August 2012, investors went to Phoenix and bought up almost 40% of all the houses for sale. This made house prices shoot up 34%. Suddenly, regular people couldn't afford homes anymore. Instead, some not so nice landlords started renting out places at high prices to people who really needed a home. Today, Wall Street isn't just interested in buying houses that people couldn't pay for. They want to control the whole housing market. And when you follow the money, you realize who really holds the keys to these houses. It turns out that Vanguard and BlackRock are the biggest shareholders in the companies that own these houses. BlackRock insists they are not in the single-family home business, yet they secretly hold a massive stake in a company with over 80,000 homes. And to make themselves look good, there are tons of new articles saying, "Don't blame BlackRock." For example, a Vox article titled "Wall Street Isn't to Blame for the Housing Market Chaos" paints them as innocent, conveniently overlooking their massive housing investments as the reason why you may never be able to afford a home. Instead, they point fingers at local governments and everyday homeowners for this crisis. Things get clear when you see who is behind these media companies. Vox gets a big chunk of its money from NBC Universal, which is basically owned by Comcast. And guess who is the big boss at Comcast? Yep, BlackRock. In fact, BlackRock owns 90% of all media worldwide. If you don't know about them, it's because they don't want you to. So why exactly does BlackRock hold so much power on Wall Street? What's the secret behind their influence in the global economy? Well, it comes down to their secret weapon, Aladdin. Nope, not the Disney movie. Aladdin is a portfolio management software that was born in 1998. Back then, it was just a basic tool meant to guess where the stock market might be going and which investments were likely to make money. But after 25 years of getting better and smarter, it's now a real powerhouse. Aladdin now stands at the cutting edge of AI and algorithms. Its code is laser focused on averting and dodging risks, and scary as it may be, it's often assertive in its financial predictions. Every dollar invested in Aladdin adds to a never-ending cycle of growth. In 2013, Aladdin managed 7% of the world's financial assets. Today, it basically doubled that. If money equals power, Aladdin stands as the most influential force in history. Yet, Aladdin is just a puppet for BlackRock. BlackRock calls the shots. They are the ones who control all the cash. While the media, partially owned by BlackRock, insists that their clients hold the true power, BlackRock itself has openly admitted that they control all the investment decisions and strategies. Yes, they will keep playing the innocent guys and blame others to free up their assets. But the truth is that BlackRock is changing how people can buy homes and rent them, often making it harder for poor and middle-class families seeking the American dream of owning a home. The housing crisis is not an isolated problem. Nope. It's actually a sign of a much bigger issue called capitalism, where wealth gets concentrated in the hands of a few big players, like BlackRock, and they end up calling the shots while you stay poor because of it. Now I'm curious to know, what is the best way to overcome this housing crisis in your opinion? Drop your answer in the comments below. As always, keep up the good fight and be wealthy.